The Primarchs, the Primarchs, the Primarchs. I know we cover them way too much on this channel, but they are, without a doubt, one of the biggest and most important parts of the 40k setting. But today, we're digging into their biggest screw-ups, specifically their homeworlds, which, to be honest, mostly got completely fucked up. Have you ever wondered what happened to Nuceria, Angron's hellhole of a planet, or Chthoniya after Horus went full bald villain mode? Well, you guys are in luck. We are once again answering the call from Cow's Corner, where we tackle the strangest and most oddly specific questions that a cow and his herd could ever ask. So we're taking a galactic tour into the origins and fates of the Primarchs Homeworlds. In this video, we'll start with a quick overview on how the Primarchs were created and then scattered across the galaxy in a whirlwind of weird warp shenanigans. After that, we'll go planet by planet, giving you a brief summary of each homeworld, what went down there, and how it all ended up. Some of these worlds thrived, some fell to ruin, and some, well, let's just say Angron was not a fan.
Oh no!
And for those of you keeping track, don't forget, in the next Power Scaling Peeps episode, the cow will finally be dropping who is the single strongest Space Marine from each chapter. We'll crown the top loyalist from every single chapter, then later this month, we'll tackle the Chaos Warbands and ultimately rank them all. But before we get to that epic power scaling showdown, we need to first take a closer look at the 18 Primarch Homeworlds. So as always, you guys know the drill. Grab some 2% milk, maybe a few chocolate chip cookies, and get comfy. It's time to nosedive into the homeworlds of the Primarchs. Let's first talk about how the Primarchs even came to exist. These degenerate space babies were created in a secret underground lab on Terra, using forbidden sciences, warp-driven arcane knowledge, and some seriously illegal substances. The Emperor molded the Primarchs from a mix of genetics, including material from himself and the powerful perpetual Erda, who considered them her own children. Now, quick side tangent for my lore nerds, Erda is one of those characters that barely gets explored. In fact, she only really shows up in the Siege of Terra books, Saturn, and Warhawk, and in those stories, we learn she's the third strongest perpetual psyker after the Emperor and Malkador. The reason I bring her up is because she is such a controversial figure with the origins of the Primarchs. Some like her, but most hate her. I'm going to go into more of her origins because why not, and maybe you guys can give me your own opinions on what you think of her character. Erda met the Emperor way back when he was a warlord king called Knock-Off during the age of the First Cities. She adored him and stayed loyal when most of the other perpetuals left him, helping him shepherd humanity towards the Imperium. Not long after the Primarch's creation, she abandoned the Emperor after seeing how far he was going to assure humanity's dominance. And this is where we reach controversy. I'm going to discuss why in a second, but Erda is a very interesting character, and I feel like I don't see a lot of lore YouTubers talking about her. I mean, it makes sense, she is only in 2 Siege of Terra books, but nonetheless, she is such a cool character. I mean, hell, she kills 4 greater demons of chaos at the same time. But back to the Primarchs, sorry, autistic cowhole. Just before the Primarchs matured, a massive warp vortex swept them across the galaxy. And this was the highly debated event I was talking about earlier. The scattering of the Primarchs has 2 tales. The most recent 40k lore states that this may have been Erda's doing. Seeing the harsh future the Emperor had planned for her children, she tried to save them. While they were still infants, she, or as Erebus suggests in the book Warhawk, possibly the Chaos Gods manipulating her, caused the vortex that scattered the Primarchs. If true, this seems to retcon the earlier telling of the scattering of the Primarchs from the First Heretic, where Argoltau and his word-bearers manipulated the Primarchs' Geller fields, allowing the Chaos Gods to steal them.
You're not making any sense at all.
Jesus, I need to frickin' stay on topic. Either way, the Primarchs ended up on worlds far from their father's reach, shaped by the places and people they found there. The Emperor, sensing they were alive, but unable to retrieve them, used their DNA to create the 20 Space Marine Legions. Meanwhile, the infant Primarchs grew up on these distant worlds. Some rose to power, some became leaders, but most left their mark on their new homes. And when the Emperor finally found them, he gave them command of their respective legions, setting the stage for the most disastrous downfall the galaxy had ever seen.
Please! Please! No!
Now, each of the worlds the Primarchs landed on was unique in its own way. From frozen wastelands to chaotic hive worlds, these planets forged their personalities, honed their strengths, and in some cases, gave them the worst headaches. Looking at you, Angron. And with that heard, it's time to get to the reason you're watching this video. Sorry, I tend to get a little too deep into the cowhole sometimes. I recently reread Saturn and Warhawk, and I remembered that Urda exists, and I'm guessing it's the first time you've ever heard of her too.
Get on with it.
Yes, get on with it!
Sorry, my bad. Let's finally break down each of the Primarchs Homeworlds, how they grew up, what happened to them during the Great Crusade, and whether or not they made it through the Horus Heresy, or ended up as pieces of space debris. And of course, what would this video be without a Lionel Johnson Exterminatus counter? I'm betting it's over 5. Trust me, the Lion really likes nuking worlds. Keep your eyes on the counter, herd. Every planet he blows up for fun is going on the tally. Make your bets, people. Make your bets. Speaking of the Lion, we're kicking things off with him and his homeworld of Caliban. Caliban was a death world, a densely forested planet infested with countless deadly creatures. The most feared of all of them were the great beasts, warp spawn monstrosities that stalked the dark forests. Humanity on Caliban had been isolated from Terra for over 5,000 years, forming a feudal society of knightly orders sworn to protect their people, exactly like Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
We are the knights who say... Nee. No, not the knights who say nee.
And this brings us to Lionel Johnson, or more commonly known as the Lion. After the scattering of the Primarchs, he crash-landed on Caliban and grew up like a feral Tarzan, surviving alone in the deadly woods until he was discovered by Luther. Luther raised him and brought him into the Order, where the Lion quickly rose to the ranks and eventually became Grand Master. Under his leadership, the Knights united and launched a great purge across the planet, finally slaying the great beasts and bringing peace to Caliban. And it was at this moment, just as Caliban was tamed, that the Emperor finally arrived. The coming of the Emperor changed everything for Caliban. The Lion disbanded the knightly orders and joined the Great Crusade at the head of his new legion, the Dark Angels. The forests were cleared, villages replaced with towering Imperial skyscrapers, and Caliban was transformed into a fortified bastion for the Imperium. But not everyone was happy, including the Lorax. Much of the old nobility, stripped of their power, turned to rebellion. It was Luther, left behind on Caliban after a falling out with the Lion during the Sarosh campaign. He was commanded to put down these uprisings. Bitter, jealous, and abandoned, Luther's resentment only grew as he ruled in the Lion's shadow. Worse still, chaos cultists and sorcerers had begun infiltrating the planet, stoking unrest from the shadows. By the midpoint of the Horus Heresy, Luther and his followers, Amir Ostalin and Zariel El-Zaras, had seized firm control over Caliban. Luther, now a massive hater, planned to declare the planet's independence from both the Imperium and the War Master, though his ambitions were constantly dragged down by infighting and scheming. But by the Siege of Terra, Caliban and the surrounding systems were his. After the Siege of Terra's conclusion, the Lion returned to Caliban and was met with betrayal. Luther's forces opened fire on his fleet, sparking a brutal planetary bombardment. The Lion retaliated, hammering Caliban from orbit before launching a full invasion. The final confrontation came when Johnson and Luther clashed in the ruins of the Order's fortress. Their duel left the ancient monastery in rubble, and the planet itself began to tear apart under the strain of constant bombardment. Around the planet, the warp began to stir, and warp storms even formed. With reality unraveling, Caliban was ripped apart and pulled into the immaterium, leaving only an asteroid where the fortress once stood. Luther was captured, Lionel Johnson vanished, and Caliban was no more. So there you have it, the very first Primarch homeworld. Caliban was utterly destroyed at the conclusion of the Horus Heresy. And yes, I know Wormwood technically exists as the surviving fragment, but let's be real, it's not Caliban. So we're not going down that rabbit hole, and thus, it doesn't count. And while the Lion didn't technically destroy this planet, his orbital tantrum did kick off the chain reaction that doomed it. So yes, we're counting this one as a 0.5 on the Lion's Exterminatus counter. Deal with it, Dark Angel fans. Up next, we have the greatest ketamine abuser's homeworld, Chemos. Chemos was once a thriving mining world, but during the Age of Strife, it was cut off by violent warp storms. With trade routes gone and resources running dry, Chemos slid into desperation. The planet's surface became dominated by fortress factories and vapor mines, where the population was forced to toil endlessly. Leisure, art, and culture were all sacrificed in the name of sheer survival. To make matters worse, the nebula clouds surrounding the planet meant Chemos existed in a perpetual gray haze. No day, no night, just endless gray. Into this bleak existence came Fulgrim. After the scattering of the Primarchs, he crash-landed on Chemos and was taken in by a member of the local enforcers. He grew quickly, as Primarchs tend to do, dazzling those around him with his intelligence, beauty, and charisma. Within just 50 years, Fulgrim had risen to power, revitalizing the dying planet. He reopened old mines, farms, and restored production, even managing to breathe a little beauty back into the planet. And this makes Fulgrim's fall to chaos even sadder. The dude was such a good guy. No, Fulgrim, no, don't reach for the sword, no! By the time the Emperor arrived, Chemos was thriving again, and Fulgrim gladly took command of the newly reformed Emperor's Children Legion, raising their fortress monastery at the heart of the capital of the planet in the city of Calix. Now before we get to its ultimate fate, let's go on a little side tangent. In the Horus Heresy novels, it's revealed that Fulgrim wasn't supposed to land at Chemos at all. The White Scar's Primarch, Jagatai Khan, was originally meant for Chemos, while Fulgrim's intended world was Chagoris. But the Elder Laughing God, Kegorak, meddled in the scattering of the Primarchs, flipping their destinations for reasons still unknown. Whether it was some cosmic joke or a deeper scheme, the swap left Fulgrim with a broken, starving world that would ultimately feed his obsession with perfection and his downfall. So did Chemos survive the Horus Heresy? By the closing stages of the war, the Emperor's children were far too warped in their excesses to care about their home world. Chemos, left undefended, was utterly destroyed by the Dark Angels during their scouring of the traitor worlds. So there you have it, Fulgrim's homeworld got absolutely wrecked, and who was responsible? That's right, our boy the Lion. Add it to the tally, folks. Chemos pushes the Lion's Exterminatus counter up to 1.5. Slow down, Mr. Johnson. You're starting to make the orcs look restrained. Now speaking of restraint, or rather the complete lack of it, our next stop takes us to Olympia, the homeworld of Perturabo, the Lord of Iron himself. Olympia was a mountainous, fortress-studded world, and its people were split across dozens of fiercely independent city-states. Perturabo crash-landed in the city of Lacus, and was raised under the tyrant of Lacus, a cruel but cunning emperor. From an early age, Perturabo displayed a genius for architecture and siegecraft, but he also grew up bitter, cold, and isolated, an outcast in his own home. When the Emperor finally arrived, he gave Perturabo command of his own legion, the Iron Warriors, and the Primarch wasted no time disposing of the tyrant of Lacus, seizing Olympia for himself and recruiting its people to fill his ranks. Olympia became a fortress world, churning out recruits and weapons for the Great Crusade. But Perturabo's life was defined by bitterness, and the seeds of his downfall were planted early on. After several disastrous campaigns and worn down by endless siege warfare, he learned that Olympia had fallen into rebellion after the death of its governor. What Perturabo didn't know was that the rebellion had been carefully engineered by the wordbearers to push him over the edge. And oh boy, did it work. Perturabo returned to his homeworld in a rage. He gave his people a choice: enact decimation, kill 1 in every 10, or face extermination.
Well, that sucks.
Entire cities were purged, street by street, millions died, smoke and ash filled the skies, and even Iron Warriors refused to take part in the massacre were cut down by their own brothers. By the end, Olympia was broken, enslaved, and burning. Perturabo knew the Emperor would never forgive him, but Horus welcomed him with open arms. This was the final shove that pulled the Lord of Iron into rebellion. After the Siege of Terra's end and Horus's death, a few Iron Warrior warbands returned to their home world, but retribution came quickly. A combined force of Ultramarines and Imperial fists besieged the planet for 2 years. When defeat became inevitable, the few remaining Iron Warriors enacted the cruelest irony imaginable. They unleashed their own missile stockpiles on Olympia itself, annihilating their homeworld in fire, leaving nothing but a barren wasteland. So there you have it. Perturabo's homeworld was erased by his own hand. And unlike Caliban or Chemos, the Lion doesn't get to take credit for this one. Olympia goes squarely on Perturabo's shoulders. Will the world actually survive all the way to the 42nd millennium? I don't know, guys. Let's find out. Because next up on our interstellar tour is Jekadite Gun's homeworld, Chagoris. Chagoris, also known as Mundus Planus, is a fertile world with lushy greenery, soaring mountains, and great seas. By the end of the Age of Strife, its humans had regressed to roughly black powder level technology, ruled by a powerful empire under the Palatine. After the Khan arrived, he united the desert tribes into a single unstoppable horde, overthrowing the Palatine and uniting the planet for the first time in centuries. The tribes eventually fragmented again after the Khan left, but this may have been intentional, to keep their warrior culture alive for future White Scar recruits. And finally, we have some good news, fellas. Chagoris actually survives the Horus Heresy. That's right, our first homeworld to make it through intact. Can I get a woo? But I will say, it's had a number of close calls. Necron tomb ships and M41 to Red Corsair raids, the planet has faced more than its fair share of chaos. But out of all of these, the closest it's come to destruction is the War of Chagoris during M42. After Cadia's destruction, the Maelstrom's influence surged, warping the planet's grasslands into fiery wastelands and mutating local wildlife into monstrous forms. The Red Corsairs then attacked, unleashing terror on the population and building monuments to the dead in a dark ritual dedicated to the Chaos Gods. Chagoris teetered on the brink of collapse, but thankfully for the White Scars, Rabute Gilliman's Indominus Crusade managed to relieve the world and deliver new reinforcements of Primarchs Space Marines. Who knows though if Chagoris will survive the next round of Chaos updates, especially with the return of Fulgrim. Fenris is a planet of fire and ice, a harsh world that orbits its sun once every 3 to 4 Terran years. Summers bring erupting volcanoes, lava flows, and tidal waves, while winter freezes most of the surface, turning the world into a literal snowball from orbit.
Well, this sucks.
During the Age of Technology, humanity colonized Fenris, but the planet was unforgiving. Colonists had to scrap their vessels to build shelters, and by the Age of Strife, Fenris had regressed to a pre-industrial state. Enter Leman Russ. Landing on Fenris and raised by a she-wolf, he eventually became the king of this world, and when the Emperor arrived, he joined the Great Crusade. Although Fenris was left alone during the heresy, soon after Leman Russ disappeared, Fenris came under attack. During M32, the Thousand Sons attacked in revenge for the burning of Prospero, beginning the Battle of the Fang. Deceiving Great Wolf Herrick Ironhelm, who was a chapter master at the time with a feint, Magnus the Red drew the bulk of the Space Wolves away, leaving only the 12th Great Company and the Fang's garrison to defend the planet. The Thousand Sons devastated Fenris's orbital defenses, laid siege to the Fang, and after days of brutal fighting, breached its walls. The defense was led by Bjorn the Fell-Handed and wolf priest Thar Heldred, who fought Magnus the Red within the fortress itself. Though Magnus succeeded in destroying the wolf priest's work, which would end the dream of Space Wolf successor chapters, Magnus would be eventually forced to withdraw after slaying the Great Wolf in single combat. But this isn't the only time Fenris has been threatened. Fast forward to 999 M41, and Fenris itself became ground zero when Magnus the Red led once again another massive Thousand Sun and demonic invasion. The Space Wolves, this time under Logan Grimnar, fought back heroically, but the system didn't exactly come out unscathed. Sure, Fenris survived in some sense, but the surrounding system absolutely devastated. Magnus got his revenge, Fenris furries got wrecked, and Prospero's ghost would have been proud. But unfortunately for me and the rest of the community, Fenris is still around, but just barely. Maybe Magnus will change that with his next invasion. Inwit is a mostly lifeless, frigid world with little natural resources and vicious wildlife. Its nomadic population survives by moving between subterranean ice hives to trade weapons, fuel, and technology, learning to fight and endure from a very young age. The planet orbits a dying star, creating two extreme zones: frozen crevices battered by shard storms, and deserts scorched by relentless sun. Despite these harsh conditions, Inwit somehow managed a small interstellar empire during the Age of Strife. On this death world crashed Rogel Dorn, who was raised among the ice tribes and mentored by tribal elders. The harsh environment honed his resilience and leadership skills, and Dorn would later even act as a warlord of the Inwit system before the Emperor arrived. But when he did finally arrive, Inwit was developed into the homeworld of the Imperial Fist. Dorn recruited extensively from the ice tribes, producing notable figures like Captain Alexius Pollock and Fafnir Ran. The world became a central hub for training, recruitment, and logistical support for the Great Crusade. During the Horus Heresy, Inwit faced a prolonged and brutal siege by the traitor forces, including the Emperor's Children, Death Guard, World Eaters, Iron Warriors, and Thousand Sons. Loyalist Imperial Fists, supported by elements of the Imperial Navy and Salamanders, held the ice hives through years of starvation, desperate supply drops, and guerrilla warfare. Despite heavy losses and widespread devastation across the Inwit cluster, the siege was ultimately lifted when traitor forces were diverted to Terra during the Solar War. Inwit survived the heresy, though the system suffered greatly, leaving behind scarred and burning worlds. So yeah, another homeworld survives into the 42nd millennium. However, a very interesting fact to note is that Inwit is no longer the Imperial Fist homeworld, and is now simply a recruitment world. The chapter is now primarily stationed over Terra in the Phalanx. I think this occurred due to the damage sustained by Inwit during the Horus Heresy, but that's just a theory. And now we're moving to the planet that birthed the schizophrenic wonder. Nostromo, which was located on the edge of the Ghoul Stars, was a planet of perpetual darkness, smothered in clouds of pollution and eternal eclipse. Only the elite could afford artificial light. Murder, theft, and extortion ruled the streets, while the wealthy oppressed the underclass with hired thugs. The wealth of the planet came from massive deposits of naturally occurring adamantium, mined and processed at the cost of a poisoned, scarred landscape. This is where our favorite schizophrenic, Conrad Kurz, the Night Haunter, crashed. Kurz, unlike many of the other Primarchs, was not taken in by any family and was left to raise himself. He spent his early years surviving off his wits and determination, feeding himself by hunting the feral animals that roamed through the vast city of Nostromo, Quintus. He was continually plagued by visions of the darkest possible future, horrifying potent walking dreams that would curse him throughout his life. As crime spiraled out of control, Kurz began punishing wrongdoers personally. First petty criminals, then corrupt officials. By the end of his first year, a self-imposed curfew kept the population in fearful line, and the Night Hunter became the planet's first true monarch. He eventually claimed all 5 cities of Nostromo, bringing productivity and a terrifying peace to the planet. When the Emperor and a delegation of Primarchs arrived, the Emperor replaced his regime with the Imperium's administration, but corruption and unrest quickly returned. The planet's worst criminals were recruited into the Night Lord's Legion, while Nostromo's underworld flourished in the Night Hunter's absence.
No. Wait.
When Conrad Kurz finally returned, it was catastrophic for the world. Hearing of rampant crime under Imperial governors, the Night Hunter arrived with his entire fleet, bombarding Nostromo with orbital weapons. Mining sites and weaknesses in the crust allowed the bombardment to rip the planet's core apart. Nostromo shattered entirely, its surface and population obliterated. Mutinous crew members and even rebellious Night Lords were purged ruthlessly. So, Nostromo joins the growing list of traitor-destroyed homeworlds. Sorry, Lionel Johnson. Looks like you didn't get this one. Another casualty of friendly fire. Oof, Horace, maybe you shouldn't have picked these guys. Baal is a blasted wasteland world alongside its moons Baal Secundus and Baal Primus. A millennia before the Imperium even existed, Baal and its moons were devastated by a nuclear and viral war, turning once beautiful planets into radiation-filled deserts. Radiation twisted many into horrific abominations, while the pure-blooded humans lived in fragile tribes, sustained only by stubborn resistance. It was upon the world Baal Secundus that the infant Primarch Sanguinius fell after being scattered across the galaxy. Despite his angelic wings and appearance, the people of Baal revered him, seeing him as their savior. He grew to maturity in the wastes, guiding the tribe with the blood and leading them in a brutal war of survival against the mutant hordes. Under his leadership, the mutants were broken and driven into extinction, while the pure tribes ascended under his rule. By the time the Emperor arrived, Sanguinius had forged a loyal people who worshipped him as a golden angel amidst the ashen ruin. When the Emperor found Sanguinius, Baal was swiftly inducted into the Imperium. Its people became the foundation of the 9th Legion, the Blood Angels, famed for their noble discipline and terrifying ferocity. Baal's conditions created hardy recruits well suited to becoming Astartes. Though the surface remained a wasteland, the Blood Angels brought industry and structure to their homeworld. The 2 moons, Baal Secundus and Baal Primus, also became recruitment grounds forever tied to the Blood Angels' destiny. During the Horus Heresy, Baal became a loyalist bastion under the command of Warden Arkad. It served as a sanctuary for members of the Shattered Legions, drawing together those who had survived the betrayals at Istavan. Inevitably, it attracted traitor attention and suffered an extended siege by enemy forces. But nonetheless, it endured through Blood Angel's valor and determination, surviving into the 42nd millennium. But Baal's darkest hour was coming. In 999 M41, Baal stood at the center of the infamous devastation of Baal, when High Fleet Leviathan descended upon this system. After a desperate, apocalyptic defense, the Blood Angels were saved by surprise, Rebute Gilliman in the Indominus Crusade. Following the devastation, Baal Secundus was left badly damaged, while Baal Primus was rendered a barren husk. On its surface, the skulls of slain Tyranids were arranged into the symbol of the bloodthirster Kabanda, mocking the Blood Angels. Once Gilliman restored the chapter with reinforcements of Primaris Marines, the Blood Angels unleashed a punishing orbital bombardment, erasing the demon's blasphemy from the surface of Baal Primus. Despite these trials, Baal stands, scarred but unbroken, a fortress world deep in the Imperium Nihilus. Before moving on to the next homeworld, I feel like I need to discuss the warp entities that Baal houses. Baal's ancient peoples spoke of two angels locked in eternal struggle, a radiant golden figure and a dark wrathful twin. These angels are not myths as we've seen from the 40K novels, but warp-born entities, shaped by the psychic resonance of Baal's people. Over the ages, the blood angels themselves fed these entities. Every time a son of Baal defended the innocent, the golden angel grew stronger. Every time a brother fell to the black rage, the angel of darkness swelled in power. In this sense, Baal is essentially a spiritual battlefield echoing into the warp itself. There is a lot of correlations here with Dante and Mephisto in the current era, and I believe that there will be a reckoning between these two and the spirit of the golden angel and the angel of darkness. So keep your eyes glued for new Blood Angels lore, because I think Sanguinius may make an appearance, and if he does come back to life, I'm going to shoot myself with a potato gun, which is the only thing you can do when GW resurrects a Primarch. I really hope they don't do it, guys. Please, please, Games Workshop, don't do it, man. Medusa is a waste world, so close to the Eye of Terror that the planet basically exists in a state of a perpetual apocalypse. Dark skies block out the sun, toxic storms rage endlessly, and earthquakes, volcanoes, and electrical tempests constantly reshape the land. The clans of Medusa move nomadically across this broken world, dragging their homes and industry on massive caterpillar mining haulers, battling each other for scarce resources and fleeting patches of stability. Medusa is called a waste world officially, but it's a death world in everything but name. Some Imperial scholars speculate the planet was once a battlefield in the ancient war between the Necrons and their long-forgotten enemies. Ferrus Manus fell to Medusa as an infant and was forged by its fury. Hardened by his early childhood, which entailed strangling a giant Necron serpent, he came to embody the strength and resilience of his world. When the Emperor found him, Ferrus recognized the Imperium as powerful, but also saw weakness and softness in its protected and ordered worlds. To preserve the spirit of Medusa, he deliberately chose not to reshape his homeworld with Imperial industry. Unlike many Primarchs, he left Medusa largely untouched, allowing the clans to continue their nomadic and brutal existence. These very clans became a recruiting pool, producing warriors hardened by survival before even undergoing gene seed insertion. Medusa itself was not harmed during the heresy, unlike so many other homeworlds. While Ferrus Manus fell tragically during Istvan V, Medusa remained intact, though its role in the war was limited to supporting the scattered remnants of the Iron Hands Legion. With their Primarch dead, the Iron Hands leaned harder into the lessons of Medusa, unyielding, merciless, and forever scarred by tragedy. In the 41st millennium, Medusa still stands, though just barely. During the 13th Black Crusade, the planet came under attack by a massive chaos invasion, resulting in the largest tank battle seen in the Imperium since the Horus Heresy. Later, after the birth of the Great Rift, Medusa was hit again, this time by the Death Guard and their allies, the Cleaved and the Purge. Very creative names, guys. Though the Iron Hands repelled the attack, large portions of the world were corrupted by Nurgle's plagues and still remain quarantined to this day. Medusa survives, but it is scarred and unstable, a world constantly reshaping itself, always on the brink of collapse. Jesus, when you line it all up, it really does feel like every loyalist homeworld has been absolutely wrecked at some point. Baal, nuked, and eaten by Tyranids. Chagoris, desecrated by chaos, and now Medusa, perpetual earthquakes and Nurgle infestations. It's like being a loyalist automatically puts a giant neon "come mess me up" sign over your planet.
Bummer. Huh? This is a bummer, man.
But I guess I can't really talk because every single traitor homeworld has been destroyed to this point. Well, at least Medusa escapes the lion's personal wrath, though the poor rock isn't exactly thriving. Nuceria was hell in planetary form, a brutal world where the nobility, the High Riders, enslaved the population and forced them into blood-soaked gladiatorial pits of Dacia. To make the slaughter more spectacular, the slave masters used the cursed neural implants known as the Butcher's Nails, which forced those implanted with it to kill to feel anything at all. It was in this arena that Angron, the Red Angel, grew up, a weapon shaped by pain, forced to kill for the amusement of tyrants.
Are you not entertained?
Eventually, Angron led a massive slave revolt. Against impossible odds, he and his fellow gladiators stormed the High Riders' fortresses. But just as defeat neared, the Emperor appeared and stole him away, teleporting Angron into safety and leaving his comrades behind to die. Their massacre by the High Riders would forever embitter Angron against his father. When the Horus Heresy erupted, Angron came back. Marching alongside Lorgar and the Word Bearers, he found his people had been taught lies. The slave masters claimed Angron had abandoned his rebellion, that he had fled at the last moment like a coward. Enraged beyond all reason, Angron ordered the complete purge of the Nuceria population. The World Eaters and the Word Bearers drowned the world in blood. Rabute Guilliman, who was seeking vengeance for Calth, arrived shortly afterwards. The Ultramarines stormed Nuceria, clashing with the traitor forces in the city of Mahor. Guilliman faced both Lorgar and Angron himself in a battle that shook the very earth. At its climax, Lorgar completed a ritual that pushed Angron past the brink of mortality, triggering his apotheosis to demonhood. Nuceria witnessed the birth of a demon Primarch of Khorne. The Ultramarines, bleeding heavily, were forced to retreat, leaving the world to the dark gods. In the aftermath of the massacre, Nuceria became a demon world as 6 of Khorne's greatest servants battled on its sands to win Khorne's favor, with Argak Hol ultimately emerging victorious. Towards the end of the heresy, the world finally met its doom. Lionel Johnson and his Dark Angels unleashed their fury from orbit, erasing Nuceria in firestorms of planetary annihilation. So that is the fate of Angron's homeworld, and so the Lion's counter ticks up yet again. Nuceria joins the pile, moving the score up to 2.5. To recap, that's 0.5 for Caliban, and then Chemos, and now Nuceria. And oh, because my brain refuses to stay in its lane, let's not forget the World Eaters' recruiting world. Boat, the other infamous World Eaters planet. If Nuceria was Angron's cradle of pain, then Boat was the twisted gym where the World Eaters worked out their rage issues. An entire world turned into a slaughterhouse of training arenas, gladiatorial pits, and war engines. So how did this world meet its end? Well, Autek Moore of the Iron Hands solved this problem in very subtle fashion. The man chucked a moon at it. I'm not kidding, he literally hurled a celestial body into the planet until the entire world cracked apart.
Hey, that's pretty good.
A literal cosmic middle finger, brutal, excessive, but you have to admit, pretty goddamn hilarious. Macragge is a bleak but beautiful planet, dominated by enormous mountain ranges that are inhabitable for its human population, most of whom live in the lowland regions. Yet despite this geography, it is revered as one of the most magnificent planets in the Imperium. Before the Great Crusade, Macragge was one of humanity's lost colonies. Not exactly a paradise, but it was livable and industrious. The people were skilled, maintained contact with neighboring systems, and had preserved some ancient warp-capable craft. Basically, they were actually normal human beings that weren't trying to actively murder each other. Perfect soil for a future Primarch with Excel powers. Rabute Guilliman landed on Macragge and was adopted by the Consul Connor. Even as a child, he was a military and administrative genius, suppressing bandit revolts, restoring order, and eventually becoming sole consul, instituting reforms that benefited the common people and turned Macragge into a model government. During the Great Crusade, the Emperor discovered Macragge after hearing tales of Guilliman's presentation powers. Recognizing him as one of his lost sons, the Emperor reunited Guilliman with the Ultramarines and relocated the Legion's base to Macragge. Under Guilliman's guidance, Macragge became the central hub for Ultramar and the 500 worlds, providing recruits, resources, and strategic command, which helped the Ultramarines become the largest legion in the galaxy. During the Horus Heresy, Macragge itself was largely spared total destruction thanks to heroic loyalist actions. The Wordbearers launched an attack using the warship Furious Abyss, one of the new Abyss-class warships, but seen in the Horus Heresy book Battle for the Abyss, which is one of the worst books of all time, don't read it, we see the Furious Abyss was destroyed en route to Macragge. Later, Macragge would also see Conrad Kurz massacre his way across the planet, inciting unrest, sabotage, and even suicide bombers, which Lionel Johnson eventually helped suppress with the Dark Angels enforcing martial law. Macragge's troubles didn't end with the Horus Heresy though. It faced the Behemoth Tyranid invasion, endured the 13th Black Crusade, and suffered constant probing attacks during the Plague Wars. Despite all of this, it remained standing, scorched, tested, but ultimately unbroken. Macragge is one of the few loyalist worlds, and actually the only loyalist world so far, that remains untouched and unspoiled by a millennium of constant warfare. Barbarous was a feral world orbiting a dim yellow sun, shrouded in constant poisonous fog that left the surface in near eternal twilight. The atmosphere was so toxic that even Mortarion, yes, Mortarion himself, couldn't breathe atop its mightiest peaks. Humanity clung to survival in the low valleys where the fog was thinner, forever hunted by nocturnal predators and oppressed by a far worse menace, the Overlords. These cruel alien warlords thrived in the choking fog, impervious to the planet's toxins. From their fortress keeps in the mountains, the Overlords enslaved the human population, ruling through terror and twisted experiments. Into this nightmare world fell the Primarch Mortarion. Mortarion's story on Barbarous is grimdark even by Warhammer 40K standards. Taken in and raised by one of the Overlords, he was molded in their cruel ways, until he realized the monstrous truth of his adopted father. Mortarion turned against the Overlords, rallying the humans of this world into a liberation army. His campaign of vengeance carved through fortress after fortress until he finally stood at the gates of the greatest Overlord citadel, only to fall short and have to be saved, or in Mortarion's eyes, cheated by the arrival of the Emperor. From this poisoned soil, the Death Guard grew into one of the most unflinching legions in the Imperium. For a time, Barbarous seemed secure under the protection of its Primarch and his legion, its people no longer enslaved by alien horrors. But this all ended once the Death Guard turned traitor, as their planet was marked for execution and destruction by the Loyalists. At the tail end of the heresy, surprise surprise, the Dark Angels under Lionel Johnson rolled up before the Siege of Terra and obliterated the planet. Bye bye Stink World, adding yet another to the Lionel Johnson kill counter. That bumps our moody Forest Knight up to 3.5 on the scoreboard. Ding ding, jackpot. Prospero was a desolate, isolated planet chosen as a haven for exiles, psychers, and mutants who wanted to escape the prying eyes of Terra. At first glance, it was barren, but its remoteness made it perfect for a civilization built on secrecy and knowledge. The jewel of Prospero was Tizca, a dazzling marble city of white towers, pyramids, and psychic-powered infrastructure. When Magnus the Red arrived, his psychic brilliance meshed seamlessly with Prospero's culture. Magnus elevated the planet into a shining beacon of sorcery, philosophy, and forbidden learning. Prospero thrived, but all good things must come to an end. When the Emperor ordered Magnus brought to heel, after his little psychic oopsie that cracked the Webway project, Leman Russ and the Space Wolves showed up for a chat. Russ bombarded Prospero from orbit, then unleashed his wolves in a slaughter so extreme, it turned the planet into ash. Every book, every spire, every carefully hoarded scrap of knowledge burned. The wolves butchered anyone they found, scholars, sorcerers, civilians, while the 15th Legion desperately tried and failed to hold them off. The duel between Russ and Magnus the Red was legendary though. Fang vs. Flame, Beast vs. Mage, and ultimately, Magnus lost, both physically and spiritually. In despair, he cast a spell that sent his legion, his city, and his archives into the warp, creating the planet of sorcerers. Prospero itself was left a charred ruin, haunted by the psychic ghosts of the slaughtered Thousand Sons and the terrifying Xenos, the Psych-Nuin, who fed on anyone that had survived the burning of Prospero. Later in the heresy, Jagatai Khan rolled up to the ruins and found nothing alive, just these psychic Xenos. However, deep in the tunnels underneath the planet, he discovered a shard of Magnus the Red, a psychic projection of the Primarch. After putting this form out of its misery in one of the saddest conversations I've ever read in my life, the Khan then had to fight off Mortarion himself when the Death Guard showed up. Both legions' fleets clashed in the skies above Prospero, but Mortarion eventually withdrew, leaving Prospero to its restless dead. But this is not how the tale of Prospero ends. 10,000 years after the heresy's end, the ruins became a hotbed of warp activity as a planet of sorcerers phased back into real space close to Prospero, bathing it in the power of the warp. 2 major battles have since occurred on its dead soil. The Space Wolves vs. Thousand Sons, when Niall Stormcaller led a mission to rescue the 13th Great Company, and the Dark Angels and Grey Knights vs. the Thousand Sons, as the Loyalists attempted to thwart a Chaos ritual. Now under Magnus's warp rule, the Demon Primarch has reshaped it into a forge world of sorcery, where weapons of chaos are hammered out for his war against the Imperium. Basically, the planet is a warp slow cooker, simmering with psychic energy, endlessly brewing more tools of heresy. Damn, Magnus, you used to be the coolest kid, and now you're a frickin' loser. Gosh, by golly, that sucks. Chthoniya was a barren and ruined mining world, and even during its earliest days, it was a gutted rock riddled with mines, catacombs, and toxic industry.
As a child, I yearned for the mines.
By the time of the Great Crusade, it was even worse, with gangs fighting for scraps in endless tunnels, burning their dead in volcanic pits. The perfect scenario for creating the Sons of Horus. Ruthless, violent killers raised in darkness. And this was where the future arch-traitor himself, Horus Luber Cow, is said to have landed. Yet his life on Chthoniya remains a complete mystery. Contradiction and omission tarnish every account of his formative years. This lack of detail has even spawned the Chthoniya isn't real theory, or at least that Horus may not have truly grown up here. The evidence is quite odd. Chthoniya shows no signs of his influence, the gangs still ran rampant throughout the world, newer Marines make no mention of improved conditions, and Horus himself carried no distinct Chthonian accent that anyone could place. Perhaps most damning, Abaddon, the so-called first son of Chthoniya, didn't even know who Horus was before he became a legionary. Regardless of these mysteries, what is certain is that the Emperor found Horus early, and that the War Master quickly assumed command of the 16th Legion during the first decades of the Great Crusade. But when Horus finally turned traitor, Chthoniya became a liability. Isolated inside Loyalist territory, the War Master left his old home to rot, with only a token garrison of Sons of Horus and word-bearers defending it. And due to its proximity to the Sol system, Dorn deployed a coalition of forces to take the planet. Consisting of Imperial Fists, Space Wolves, Custodians, and Mechanicum, they hit the planet hard in 006 M31. They crushed the token defenders, renamed Lubercal's Gate into Traitor's Gate, and forced Chthonian gang scum into yellow armor as new recruits. Ironic doesn't even begin to cover it. Half of the true sons of Chthoniya ended up as Imperial Fists. And of course, it didn't end there. For years, the tunnels boiled with guerrilla resistance, whole Sons of Horus warbands reorganized under the surface, mutating new inductees, and turning Chthoniya into a festering insurgency. When the Sons of Horus inevitably returned to try and retake the planet in 013 M31, the war escalated into the infamous Siege of Chthoniya, a brutal conflict of titans clashing, trap-laden fortresses, Alpha Legion trickery, and word-bearer rituals bleeding the soil red. Ultimately though, none of that mattered. The heresy ended, Horus died, and Chthoniya was destroyed by the Dark Angels in 014 M31. That once infamous world, birthplace of the War Master himself, was erased with both millions of traitors and loyalists alike still on it. Classic Dark Angels. So I'm assuming you can guess who got blood on his blade again. Lionel Johnson. Add Cathonia to the count, gentlemen. Right now, we're sitting at 4.5, with Chemos, Caliban, Nuceria, Barbarous, and now Cathonia. Looks like I'm almost right. But will the Lion claim just one more traitor world? There are 4 legions left. Make your bets, people. Make your bets. Colchis was an enormous world, 3 times the size of Terra. Its long solar days broken into strange subdivisions that shaped a unique culture. Though once a technologically advanced world, by the time of the Age of Strife, it had regressed to a feudal society ruled by the Covenant, a powerful religious institution that bound its people in superstition, slavery, and ritual. The Covenant's priests wielded absolute power, ensuring the world remained locked in theological tyranny. When the infant Lorgar was discovered on the world and raised by Corfarion, he grew into a prophet who eventually overthrew the Covenant in a holy war, reshaping Colchis into a religious state under his own vision of truth and faith. When the Emperor found Lorgar, Colchis was swiftly absorbed into the Imperium. Its people granted technology and prosperity after centuries of stagnation. For a time, the planet flourished under Lorgar's rule, feeding recruits and resources to the new Wordbearer's Legion. Yet, when the Emperor departed with his newly rediscovered son, Colchis decayed once more, reverting to its fractured state. As the Horus Heresy erupted, Colchis became a haven and a fortress world for the Wordbearer's cults, temples, and their dark forbidden rites. Its population was reshaped into a religious machine, fully devoted to chaos and the will of their Primarch. The fate of Colchis was sealed in 10 M31, when the Iron Hands, guided by their Medusan council, launched the Bitter War. Armed with proscribed and horrific weapons from the Vaults of Medusa, nanoplagues, bio-autonoma, and the Keys of Hell, the Iron Hands descended on the Wordbearer's homeworld with merciless intent. The attack forced a mass recall of Wordbearer warbands from across the galaxy, swelling the defense of their sacred world. The campaign escalated into a galaxy-spanning conflict, but its end came after the Siege of Cathonia. A rogue Imperial fleet composed of Imperial fists and loyalist Thousand Sons under Lord Castellan of Vander Garrus joined the onslaught, striking at Colchis itself. Alongside them were the Ultramarines, led by Captain Remus Ventanus, the hero of Calth, who broke the Wordbearer's lines in a cataclysmic battle across the planet. In an act of defiance and closure, Ventanus planted the very same standard carried at the Battle of Calth into Colchis' soil before withdrawing, leaving the world to its fate. By the end of the Bitter War, Colchis was already broken. Its government and industry were shattered, its people starved or dead, and its sacred cities reduced to ruins. The Inquisition and the Ultramarines deemed the world irredeemable. From orbit, the Ultramarines' battle barge, Octavius, unleashed cyclonic torpedoes that ripped through the planet's fragile structure. The detonations destabilized Colchis' crust, igniting tectonic fury and finally annihilating the world. Thus ended Colchis, cradle of Lorgar and the Wordbearers, its memory erased in fire. Just another name on the long, bloody tally of dead Primarch Homeworlds, but most importantly, not claimed by the Lion. The Mustafar Knock-Off is next. Nocturne was a harsh and violent world racked by seismic upheavals, volcanic activity, and the constant raids by the Dark Elder slavers. Its bleak, molten landscape bred a hardy and stoic people who endured suffering with resilience and strength. It was here that the infant Primarch Vulcan was cast down, raised among the people of Nocturne, and became their protector. In time, Vulcan rose as king of the world, uniting its scattered settlements and driving back the Dark Elder raiders who had plagued them for generations. When the Emperor finally came to Nocturne, he found Vulcan already established as both ruler and defender. From that moment on, Nocturne became the homeworld of the Salamander's Legion, and its people the steady, resilient core of Vulcan's sons. During the Great Crusade, Nocturne supplied the Salamanders with the recruits who were renowned for their endurance, strength, and compassion. But the Horus Heresy brought turmoil to the world, as the Legion was shattered at Istvan V and its survivors scattered. In one of the more infamous episodes during the Heresy, the Salamander's commander, Artillus Numan, bore the body of his Primarch back to Nocturne in the desperate hope of resurrecting him. This journey would bring about the Battle of Nocturne itself, one of the most significant threats to the world during the Heresy. Pursued through the ruined storm by the Death Guard, the traitors attempted to virus bomb Nocturne, but the planet's colossal forges incinerated the contagion in orbit. Forced into a ground war, the Death Guard clashed with survivors of the 18th Legion under Chaplain Namus Raitin. After brutal fighting across volcanic plains, the traitors were driven off-world. Unlike many of its brother worlds, Nocturne endured. Though scarred by the Heresy, it remained the Salamander's homeworld well into the current setting. Yet its survival did not spare it from further ordeals. In 761 M41, demon engines of the warband known as the Soul Smelters assaulted the planet, forcing the Salamander's chapter master to open his most sacred weapons in defense. Later, in 975 M31, the Dragon Warriors mounted an attack on both Nocturne and its moon, Prometheus, testing the Salamander's resolve yet again. Through every age and invasion, Nocturne has remained steadfast, its people and its sons reflecting Vulcan's enduring legacy of resilience, sacrifice, and fire. You know, you gotta burn those pesky Eldar. Deliverance is a mineral-rich moon orbiting the forge world of Kievar. Settled by exiles, slaves, and criminals from Kievar, the moon was initially a harsh and oppressive environment. Its inhabitants lived in crude forced domes that shielded them from the vacuum of space, while they were forced to labor in massive mining operations under the strict oversight of Kievar's tech guilds. Life on Deliverance was brutal, and the population endured constant hardship and exploitation. Everything changed, though, with the arrival of the Primarch Corvus Corax. Recognizing the suffering of the moon's inhabitants, Corax united the oppressed workers and led a revolution against the tech guild overlords. After a hard-fought rebellion, the exiles successfully liberated their home, renaming it Deliverance to reflect their newfound freedom. Shortly after the uprising, the Emperor arrived, integrating Deliverance into the Imperium and designating it the homeworld of the 19th Legion, the Raven Guard. After the Dropsite Massacre, the Raven Guard were left shattered. In desperation, Corax used gene tech gifted by the Emperor to rebuild his legion in the hidden labs of Ravendelve on Deliverance. But I guess these labs weren't very hidden, because the Alpha Legion, led by Omegon, were able to infiltrate Deliverance, embedding disguised operatives and stirring rebellion across the system. Their true goal was Corax's genetic secrets, or to put it more specifically, Big Daddy E's semen. A false apothecary corrupted the gene seed, creating warped abominations, while guild rebels attacked Deliverance. The assault on Ravendelve ended in blood. Chief Apothecary 6 was slain, but most infiltrators were exposed and killed, though Omegon escaped with the stolen gene tech. Corax successfully led a counterattack with Loyalist Titans, crushing the traitor guild masters. Deliverance would end up surviving the Horus Heresy, unlike Prospero or Chthonia, but the Raven Guard never fully rebuilt their lost strength. In the current setting, the Twin Worlds have seen little glory. The most notable threat came in 996 M31, when Deliverance may have lay in the path of a giant wog. And that's about it. There is no recent lore on Deliverance at all. The Raven Guard yet again get left gathering dust, like GW forgot they even exist. Maybe that neglect is exactly how Corax would have wanted it. Or maybe, just maybe, my sad emo bird boys deserve a little bit more love than the scraps they've been given. Unlike their brothers, Alfarius and Omegon have no clear or singular homeworld. Their beginnings are shrouded in secrecy and contradiction, appropriately so for two gaslighters that thrive on misdirection. According to the account, an Alfarius headed the Hydra. Alfarius was in fact the first Primarch found by the Emperor. Cast on Terra itself, after the scattering of the Primarchs, he emerged just outside the Imperial Palace. There, he was discovered directly by the Emperor, who slew scavengers to keep the child's existence a secret. Raised in secrecy by the Emperor and Malcador the Sigillite, Alfarius was molded into a master of infiltration, subtlety, and manipulation. In contrast, his twin, Omegon's supposed origins lay far from Terra. He is said to have grown up alone on a barren, nameless world where he discovered the alien relic known as the Pale Spear. By the time human pirates had stumbled onto the planet, Omegon had already realized what he was, a manufactured being like the Primarchs he would one day meet. Using the pirate ship, he set out towards Imperial space, gradually piecing together the truth of the Emperor and his great work. We don't even know if these were truly their homeworlds due to the silliness of the Alpha Legion and their obsession with lying, but these are the facts we have to work with. We have no idea what happened to Omegon's strange empty world, and obviously Terra is still around, with a lot of holes in it. What are your guys' thoughts on Alfarius' world? Is it Terra? Let me know your theories down in the comments. But that is it for this video. Some Primarch worlds remained, but most got vaporized. The final tally on the Lion's kill streak is 4.5. Caliban, Chemos, Nuceria, Barbarous, and Chthoniah. Off by 0.5? What the hell, man? What the hell? I don't know how I lost my own bet when I'm writing the script, but hey, I'm just a cow. For fun, let's tally how many traitor and loyalist worlds made it to the modern setting. Well, not a single traitor world made it, unless you count Prospero, but that planet got absolutely glassed. On the loyalist side, we have Chagoris, Fenris, just barely, Inuit, Ball, Medusa, Macragge, Nocturne, and Deliverance. So only Caliban got destroyed. Way to go, Lion. Ironic. He destroyed 4 traitor worlds, but he also kind of destroyed his own. Very, very ironic. Cue the Palpatine clip.
Ironic.
Once again, I am shouting out all my membership and Patreon subs for this month, regardless of tiers, because I love you guys so gosh darn much. So we have Ryania Basket, Omar, Matadori or Mike, Soft Use, and William Strong. 5 honorable cows so far. I hope many more join them. Once again, I will never put any of my content behind a paywall. With that said, my membership and my Patreon have a lot of fun perks. For example, one of these perks on my Patreon is that my subscribers are going to get to pick the last video in this month. Right now, power scaling the Lost Primarchs is winning, but there is still a lot of time to go. So if you guys are interested in maybe changing that vote or suggesting another video idea, consider subscribing to either platform. I would greatly appreciate it because it helps support all this wonderful content. As always guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, stay milked, and remember, don't miss out on next week. Who do you think will be named the strongest loyalist Space Marines in the current setting? Well, obviously I don't want to spoil anything, but it's gonna blow your freaking cow-sized brain. Stay milked guys, and I will see you very, very soon.